They're telling me that the Word of God says I'm supposed to run away from immoral sexual acts, and I'm supposed to respect women and those kind of things. Well, I wasn't getting enough word in me to rehearse. I was getting more of that kind of lyrics. So when I would get into a situation where I had to make a decision, right? And the voice of God would say, Kelvin, do this. I would have to battle within myself. Am I going to listen to the voice of God, or I'm going to listen to all these other things? What am I going to put my faith in? Yes, ma'am.
And so is that why, or would you say that is why people have a hard time doing the will of God, because there's an imbalance of the word and other stuff?
I'm going to let you all answer that. Do you feel like the reason why people have a hard time following the will of God is because there's an imbalance of word versus other things? Yes. Okay. So let's take this one. I'm going to back up another one. Let's deal with school. Okay. When Brother Kelvin was getting ready to go off to college, Brother Kelvin wanted to go to Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University in Tallahassee, Florida. Okay. Called Florida A&M. Only thing I had was my belief. I believed I was going to go. My mother said you can go wherever you want to. She was leaning on 2 schools up in north, somewhere that had scholarships for me, right? I didn't want those schools. I wanted a school that was way down south because I wanted to be where it was warm, and they had a wonderful program for me. I applied to only 2 schools. Why would some knucklehead kid only apply to 2 schools? See, society said you should apply to about 6 or 7 schools and hope that one of the schools that you choose will choose you. I was a believer. I wasn't going for this hope thing. I'm going targeted. There's only 2 schools I want to go to, and my top choice is Florida A&M. My second choice is Hampton. Only 2 schools I applied to. Hampton called me right away. They gave me my room assignment. They had my books and everything ready and set. But that wasn't my top choice. My top choice was Florida A&M. And so Florida A&M was dragging their feet, but I kept believing. And God, because of my faith, helped unroll some things to the point where I not only went to Florida A&M University, but I lived off campus my freshman year free of charge. Okay. I also met the president of the university prior to going down there. So my first trip to Tallahassee, Florida, I was sitting in not the president's office, but the vice president's office. And I went from one vice president's office to an executive vice president's office on my first trip to Tallahassee. Why? Because of my faith. Faith has to deal with what you hear and how you process it. The act of faith. It says that once you make that statement, once you put that thing in motion, God begins to do the rest. It is an action. Faith without works is dead. Okay? So I'm going, yes.
Can you clarify though? Because I don't want them to walk away, not that they will, but there's faith in their presumption. There's faith. Kenneth, what's his name? Fred Price talked about there's faith and there's presumption. You can have faith in something that God doesn't have for you as well. Can you clarify that a little more?
So, what you need to know is you got to know the voice of God. And in order to know the voice of God, you have to spend time with God. And you have to spend more time with God than you spend with anything else. The reason why the young man back there knows his mother's voice over any other, he's been with his mom his entire life. And every time she breathes and he's close to her, he knows the way she breathes more than somebody else. He knows if his mother goes, he know that was his mother's and not the person next to her, because he spent that much time with her. He's that close to her. It's the same way with God. You get so close to God that you know him, and then you'll know his desires for you, and you know what he's saying to you. The way you stay out of being presumptuous is by getting to know God. There are things you'll know that is what he said, and that's not just something I want. Does that make sense? The presumption is changed by you being able to hear the voice of God. That's where you get your clarity. Okay? Now, I'm going to wrap up because I've gone over my time, and this is what I want to tell you this. This is the last thing I want to tell you. Many people think that to have faith means that you're not supposed to be prepared. Okay? A lot of people feel like faith is just something you just throw out there willy-nilly. But that's not the truth. Your preparation, please, if you have something to write down with it, I'd like for you to write this down. Your preparation is an essential component to your faith in action. 3 things you need to be prepared to do. 1, you need to be prepared to hear the voice of God. 2, you have to be prepared to obey the voice of God. And the 3rd thing, you have to be prepared to look foolish to others or to stand out when you obey the voice of God. 3 things. Prepared to hear the voice of God. Be prepared to obey the voice of God. 3rd, be prepared to look foolish or to stand out to others when obeying the voice of God. Okay? Daniel and the Hebrew boys in chapter 1 of Daniel, verses 8 through 20, looks like this. The Hebrew boys were prepared to face trials and difficult times before they faced them. They knew they were going into captivity, but before they got there, they had prepared their hearts for whatever was to come. You as young people also must prepare your heart for what's yet to come by spending time in the face of God so that you're used to hearing his voice. You're willing then to obey his voice and to look foolish to others when doing so. In our times of worship here, this is a safe place. Be ready to look foolish even here. So when God asks you to do something out there, you are prepared. Success happens. A quote I heard once and says this: